We are really, really happy and delighted to see you because for the last 3 years, this has just been tested in Peterborough Diocese. And so today is when we're taking it national. And it's just so exciting for us to see where we are reaching. So it's great to see so many of you. Thank you for sparing the time this evening. Evenings are so precious with family, especially after a day at work or juggling children or whatever else you do. We really appreciate you being here and we hope you'll find it useful. Right, okay. Now that we're all here, and just in case there's anyone that's still trying to get in, our amazing Anna in the background is going to play a little cute promo video for you. Here you go. Over to you, Anna.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Nobbs. I work for Peterborough Diocese as the Children's Mission Enabler, and I'm working in partnership with my friend.
Sammy Jordan. I work for Hope Together, where I lead the project Hope for Every Home. And Charlotte, I'm really excited because I know you've got some good news to share.
I definitely do. The good news is that we have a new Happiness Club toolkit for churches to support schools as they nurture the well-being of children.
Now, Charlotte, I know what you mean by happiness clubs because we've been playing with this for a couple of years now, but other people won't. What is a happiness club?
Great question, Sammy. It's a club where a church hosts sessions after school or during school with pupils based around 10 keys for feeling happier. When I say keys, these keys are things like giving or relating, that's making friends, exercise, trying out new things, and more.
So, this is a great opportunity for a church to come alongside and learn with a local school, build relationships, and serve the school as well and meet some of the current well-being needs of its pupils. Awesome.
The good news that we want to share with you is that this toolkit is absolutely free and everything you need is easily accessible online. It includes everything a church might need for how to share these ideas with your local school and how you might prepare your club safely and well.
So if you go online, you'll find a series of videos. The first lot are about the 10 keys to happiness. If you watch them all, it takes about an hour and 15 minutes, but you don't have to watch them all at once. There are then some fantastic resources that give you everything you need to set up and then run a happiness club in your context. There's tips from people that have already been doing this, and there's even a fabulous story from someone in Northamptonshire that already runs a happiness club in a school.
Wonderful. So do have a look at the resources. Get in touch with Sammy or myself if you want to talk anything through.
But it's not all online, or at least it's not all about you just looking online on your own, because we are here to resource and support you. So we want to invite you to hang out with us online in February. We're going to do a special session to take you through the resources, share some hints and tips and stories, answer any questions, because we are here to support you and cheer you on, because we would love happiness clubs to be available to churches and schools all across the country.
Until then, have a look at the resources and get in touch with either of us. As Sammy said, we really, really want to support you and cheer you on. We'd love to hear from you even before February comes. So we hope to see you soon.
And here we are in real life. I hope you can tell the difference. Charlotte, probably what we should do before we introduce happiness clubs and delve into the detail is introduce ourselves. So if I start, I'm Sammy Jordan. I work for Hope Together. I run the project Hope for Every Home. Basically, what my job is to create resources to make faith as accessible for people to share as possible and to support them while they do that. But my background is working with children and families. So I was a teacher, I ran a teacher training course, and then I worked for a church for a number of years with children and families and local schools. So schools and children are really dear to my heart. I've also got a child with special needs and with anxiety. So I know the importance of doing what we're going to look at tonight, which is what I call going upstream and equipping children with the skills they need to navigate the ups and downs of life. So that's me. Charlotte, over to you.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Nobbs. I work for Peterborough Diocese as the Children's Mission Enabler. And my heart is around how do we engage with children and families who do not ordinarily come to church on Sundays. I am interested in the families who come on Sundays, but since the majority of children do not come to church on Sundays, that's where a lot of the focus of what I do is. And so working with schools is an obvious place because that's where children reside. And happiness clubs particularly are very significant to me because they allow us to really get to know some children, to really dig deep into what they perceive as happiness and well-being, to learn from them. And I hope also that they learn from us. There is enormous scope for well-being from those who volunteer alongside the children, as well as well-being for the children who are part of the group. So it's one of the things that I absolutely love. And if you have come and you are not a church leader, that's absolutely fine. But I just wanted you to know that there will be a side to this webinar where we will keep referring to church volunteers. But that doesn't mean that if you're working in a school or you're working as a volunteer in a library, that you couldn't run something like this. But please forgive us when we just jump into what it's like to be a volunteer in church. Happiness clubs, first and foremost, are aimed at primary age children. So that's one of the things I think that you need to hold in your head. I also would say that you could probably do it with year sevens. We haven't actually trialed it with year sevens, but we think you could. And it's also for children who aren't in crisis. We're talking about, as Sammy said earlier, thinking a little bit about what does it look like upstream? If we go upstream with these children, can we then prevent a whole lot of things happen when they come downstream? If we invest in them as primary age children, will that prepare them for when they're teenaged? We had a doctor on our Zoom conversation this morning, and he was saying how research has shown that early interventions make a really significant impact upon children's well-being. And many children's mental health issues that get diagnosed will be by about the age of 14. So we're trying to get before that. We're trying to build something into their lives that will last way beyond just doing the club. And Sammy and I are going to put in the chat now where you can find all the resources. You have two places and they are free. One is from Peterborough Diocese and one is from Hope. And both sites basically mirror each other and they will connect to another site, which is Action for Happiness, which is the organisation that we are partnering with and on which we are basing all the stuff that we're doing today. You will probably be aware that there has been a real rising concern about the well-being of children, particularly since the pandemic. And in 2021, 24% more children were in contact with child and young people's mental health services than 2020. I mean, that's a remarkable statistic. And the wonderful thing about what we're doing with happiness clubs is we are trying to combat that statistic. We want to turn that round. And happiness clubs are an opportunity for churches to partner or volunteers to partner or teachers to partner with the school pupils to explore ahead of crisis how we can build some really good habits for life that will remain with them for life so that they are mentally stronger, emotionally stronger through the ups and downs of life. We know that actually a child can't receive much if they are in a terrible emotional state. They can't thrive in education if they are all over the place. And so we are trying to give them the best start that they can have. Now, I'm going to show you one of the keys that we're going to talk about. There are 10 keys for feeling happy. One of them is exercise. Now, exercise isn't just about going for a run or playing hockey. It can also be about your sleep hygiene. How do you go to sleep at night? It can be to do with how many hours of sleep you're having. But there's also some research that says that when we are physically active, it not only makes us feel happier, but it fires in our brains so that we can concentrate better. So would you like to do a little bit of an experiment and see if this helps with firing your brains and making you feel happier? So we're going to do some gymnastics with our fingers. Can you get your index fingers just to do a little bit of exercise, okay? Concentrate on that. Can you feel all those muscles moving? I wonder if your index fingers have even done that today. Oh, you are very fit. You are marvelous. Right, in a minute, I'm going to count down from 3 to 0. And I'm going to ask you with your index fingers to reach up as high as you can above your head and try and touch the tips of your index fingers right above your head. 3, 2, 1, 0. Can you do it? Oh, very good. Now come back down and do your finger exercises. And this time you're going to see if you can do it more accurately, having done it once, okay? 3, 2, 1, 0. Oh, very good. Now grasp your hands and put them behind your back. Now grasp your hands and put them in the front. Put them behind the back. Now reach up high and get those fingers up high. Can you touch them? And now finger gymnastics again. Hands in front. And can you stand up and sit down without using your hands on your chair? Ready, steady, go. Oh, very good. Now that should aid your concentration. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the people who might be really good for running a happiness club. You might be a volunteer from church who's actually had no experience of coming into school. You're absolutely fine to be in here and part of this conversation, even if you have no experience of being into school. Our resources will support you in that. Maybe you are someone who's had lots of experience. You're also a great person to be part of this. I would say another thing, maybe you are a worker or someone who is in school already, like a TA or a teacher or someone who hears readers. You would also be a great person for running a happiness club. You might be a vicar. You might be someone who's just thinking, I'm just really interested in promoting well-being amongst children. If you are any of those things, you are welcome. And we think that there's a broad breadth beyond that volunteering that actually we haven't even thought about.
The only caveat we would say is that, whilst you don't need any experience to do this, you don't need, dare I say it, any special collar or special qualification. You do need to be willing. And you need to be willing to engage in a conversation with your school, probably your church leader. And part of that conversation will mean you also need to be willing to make sure that you are DBS checked and safeguarding trained. Okay, so we want to release you to feel like, yes, I can do this. But we want to do that safely because happiness clubs are working with children, often some vulnerable children, and we need to do it safely and well. You are really important people because one of our hints and tips in the pathway, one of the things we say is you've always got to talk to your church leader about this. If you're doing a happiness club, representing a church. You have to have their permission. Is there anyone here from a school? Is there anyone who's here from a school background and you want to serve your school? Maybe you're on the team there or a volunteer there. We are on the team if you're a volunteer, but maybe it's a paid role or it could be a volunteer role. Is there anyone in a role that I haven't thought about, a wider kind of community role? We have had, and we do know it's possible to do happiness clubs in things like uniformed group settings and things like that. So although we will primarily talk about schools and churches in relation to schools, there are other ways that you can run happiness clubs. Okay, so I'm going to hand back over to Charlotte now. We're going to get into some of the resources. Something to bear in mind is that our time together this evening is quite short. You will not leave here feeling ready to run a happiness club. What we hope is you'll leave here knowing where to go to find out how to prepare yourself so that eventually you do feel ready to run a happiness club. We're going to take you through lots of resources. Okay, don't feel overwhelmed. They're all linked to the website. So if at the end of this you think, oh my goodness, where do I start? Just go to one of our websites and it will take you through it step by step. But we just want to introduce some of them to you now so that when you do find the website for yourself, things begin to look a bit familiar. Charlotte, over to you.
One other thing before we go to the website, we did mention it, but it is really important that we just say that at this point, when you go into school, there will be safeguarding policies. And when you walk into school, you are under the jurisdiction of those safeguarding policies. If you're going in as a church member, a volunteer, you need to go in with your church DBS, but the school might say on top of that, you need to have another DBS. Now, the church DBS is one that the church pays for, but the school's one, if they require you to have a DBS, they should pay for that. It's up to the discretion of the school to say whether you need that DBS, but you need to be ready for that even if you have one. And it's also really important that you speak to the school about what is required of you around that. We will talk a little bit more about that. And again, our resources do follow that. But when we're saying anybody can do this, obviously it is with the provisos that we're doing things safe. So Anna, do you think we could go to, I think we're about slide 5, I think, if that could come up next. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Just coming. Okay, if you go to the Happiness Club pages, this is the Hope one, it will give you a kind of checklist of all the things that you need to do to get ready to be able to run a happiness club. One thing after another after another. So the first thing is go and buy the one thing you need to buy. This is the only thing that actually is going to cost you anything. I looked on World of Books today and I found one for £4. But you can buy them, and that was obviously used. So a new one we think is somewhere between £10 and £12-ish. And this book is really, really useful because it's just got hundreds of ideas for each key. So when you're talking to your school, you can be showing this book and saying, this is the kind of thing that we're doing. And it's got each key in there with examples of things that you might do. The second thing is obviously to grab a notebook, to get ready, and then with your notebook to watch the training videos. Now you'll see in step 3, it says watch the 8 training videos, which sounds rather alarming. Now, can I say the 8 training videos, if you watch them all, we think it would take you an hour and a quarter. They are really small, pithy videos. They are hosted by Val and Peter, who are part of the authorship of the book and the real experts in this. And they cover 2 keys at a time, giving you ideas of what's behind the keys and how do you go about doing that. When you click on watch the 8 training videos, it takes you away from Sammy's and my websites. It takes you to the Action for Happiness website, where there is a little kind of, I don't know what you call it, like a little form that you have to fill in. It's something like your I think name and email address, because they have to track how many people come onto their site. They are a charity and they all the time need to be just working out what's going on. It doesn't sign you up for anything other than for them to be able to tell what you're doing. So don't get put off by that. The videos are really engaging. And one of the things that Peter and Val say is the best way for delivering the stuff for happiness clubs is to try and live out some of the stuff that they're talking about. So I really encourage you to do that and just have a really good look through the website and see what's on there so you just get familiar with the training behind it. And you don't have to watch all 8 training videos all at once. For some people, that might just feel overwhelming. For some people, actually, they might say, actually, I need to see all 8 training videos because then I get a feeling of where we're going to. It just depends on your time, your capacity, and so on. But we would encourage you to make sure that you have watched the right video ahead of the time that you're going to do the Happiness Club, because it is so informative and so, so helpful. Sammy, do you want to say something about the Padlet board?
I can do. Anna, can we have the slide or the web page with the Padlet board? So just as a recap then, happiness clubs are about skills to equip primary school age children with the skills they need to navigate the ups and downs of life. A happiness club will not necessarily make a child happy. Okay, it's not about living in that permanent state of bliss, but it's about being resourced to navigate life's ups and downs. So there are 10 keys, 10 skills, if you like, that happiness clubs look at. Altogether, they spell great dream. And you can see a little bit of this on the Padlet board. The G for giving, the R for relating, the E for exercising are the first of the 3 keys. And when you're running a happiness club session, for example, in a school, it might be after school, it might be during a lesson, it might be at a lunchtime. The idea is that you will choose one of these keys. You don't have to do them in order. You can choose which order works for your school. There are 10 keys. You could do 10 sessions. You could do more, you could do less. We reckon it would probably take 6 to 10 sessions to cover the keys, but you might want to go slower in your context. Now, what the Padlet board is your resource library. The books, if you're not very tech and you just want something on paper, the books will do it as well. But the basis of a happiness club is that we give the children an activity. It could be a game or it could be a simple make that allows us to explore the key that we're looking at and structures, scaffolds a conversation. So we'll introduce the key, get them thinking, make something, do something, reflect on it to consolidate and embed what we've learned about that key. It's very, very simple. It doesn't take a lot of resources. So there's a lot of resources in the book, but the Padlet board is where during the trial that has happened in Peterborough Diocese for the last 3 years, anything that's worked and has been effective has been put on this Padlet board. Okay, so you have got some introductory things. You'll see the getting started column there. So the way the Padlet board works is you can scroll side to side. And if you go across, you'll find all the 10 keys, but you can also scroll down. So you find the key that you want to look at. Okay, and then you scroll down to find the right activity that suits you and the children in your group. Now, happiness clubs are designed to be ran across the primary school age range, and like Charlotte said, potentially into year 7 as well. So one of the reasons that there's a variety of activities is so that you can choose the right thing, not just for your children, but for their age range. You can see on the left the column getting started. So that's where we've got things like session plans, action plans, risk assessment templates, all the things that you might need to think about before you set up and run a happiness club. We're going to take you through some of them shortly when we look at our action plans. But the idea behind the book and the Padlet board is that you really can plug in and play. You don't have to be thinking up your own activities and resources. We have got tried and tested ones here for you. on this interactive site. So you'll find the link to the Padlet board on both of our websites, the Diocese of Peterborough and Hope, on the Happiness Club pages. But the Padlet board itself is hosted by Action for Happiness. You just need to know that. Okay, Charlotte, back to you.
So if we just go on to the next slide, that would be amazing. Thank you. We're going to hear from Claire Barber. Claire has run a happiness club in St Andrews, which is a school in Kettering in Northampton. She's done them in lots of other places as well, but she's going to talk about this particular club. In case you don't pick up what it is that she did, I'm going to give you a picture of how she decided to run the Happiness Club. So at its basics, I would say happiness clubs probably are as simple as a welcome with maybe juice and biscuits if the school will allow it, an icebreaker around one of the keys or two keys, it depends what you're doing, some kind of activity that enforces conversation and encourages conversation, and then finally bring it all together. That's simply what a happiness club is, because by the time the children arrive and get their coats off, put their book bags down and all the rest, you only have actually a very short time to do things before you're getting their book bags together and their coats back on. Also, what you need to understand with Claire is that she thought there would be amazing mileage in asking some of the older folk from church if they would like to be part of the Happiness Club, if they would like to think about how do you feel happy alongside the children and ask them how do they feel happy. So I think the head teacher had selected 9 children who he thought could really do with the Happiness Club. And can I remind you again, these aren't children in the extremes. They're children who the head teacher felt would really benefit from a little bit of help. And then Claire asked 9 people from the local church to come and join in with a discussion. So this is Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire. I work with primary schools and churches in Northamptonshire, and last year I did some online training on setting up happiness clubs in primary schools. And since then I've been running intergenerational happiness clubs where a small group of pupils from the school and the same number of older people from the local church are equal participants in the club. Over 6 weeks they explore different ways to feel happier. Now, 40 adults and children have graduated as happiness ambassadors from the club, with the job of sharing the tips and techniques that they've learnt with others in school, in church and at home. We have a graduation celebration at the end of each club where we invite members of the participants' family to join us, and we also invite back everyone from the previous club so the school and church members can reunite with each other. I've seen such a positive impact on strengthening the link between our church and our local primary school. Previously, the connection largely fell to our vicar, who would visit the school regularly doing things like assemblies, but there wasn't really any opportunities for the people in the respective school and church environments to mix or get to know each other. But through Happiness Clubs, school pupils have spent quality time with people of faith from the church congregation. And the church members have experienced the primary school environment, which is obviously very different from church, and they've got to know young people who learn there. I think there are 2 main nuggets of gold embedded in these happiness clubs. The first is that it focuses on something that everyone has some experience of. We could all do with finding ways to help ourselves and others feel happier. It's a universal human theme that can benefit anyone, regardless of their age, their level of education, or whether you have any experience of faith. So you're starting on a really strong foundation of having something in common. And secondly, it's so relational. Every club that I've run has been different, even though we've been exploring the same things. It changes depending on the people who are taking part. There have been such special moments in every single one, and challenges too. It doesn't need lots of funding, although you do need to be prepared to buy lots of biscuits. It doesn't need any expertise or teaching experience. The training offered is free and will give you everything you need to get going. The only investment required, I think, is just a heart for connecting with your school, a curiosity in finding out about what's going on in children's lives, and a willingness to try something new. So go for it.
I had the privilege of going to one of Claire's happiness clubs, and there was a lovely little lad there. And I was asking him, I think he was about year 5, and I was asking him what he made of happiness clubs and how he first encountered them. And he really, really loved getting to know the older people. That was one of the most significant things for him. And he's told me how funny it was because the first time he met some of these older people, it was World Book Day. And he said that he had turned up in a spandex Superman suit. And he said it was really interesting to get to know someone in his alter ego. It was very, very funny. But they absolutely love the relationships that they built with the older people. One of the keys is about trying new things, and the wonderment on these children's faces when they found out that 75-year-olds were learning new things. That was just remarkable. Like we expect, don't we, children to learn new things. But these conversations that were growing up and bubbling up, that these were commonality experiences, it was just beautiful. I can't tell you. Let me have a look. So the next thing I think we need to talk about is the action plan. I'm just going to pop that into the chat. Again, you will find this on our Hope website or the Peterborough Diocese website. I've actually downloaded it. It looks a little bit like that, if you can see it. And this action plan helps you with your successful delivery of a happiness school club. So if you're thinking, right, I've got to really go through step by step to make sure that everything is covered, you've got everything in this document. So some of the things that we would really suggest in here, I'll give you a kind of the checklist that's in here so you get a feel of what you would find in here. Have you got the agreement of your incumbent? If you're going in as a church volunteer, please don't go in without speaking to your vicar. Obviously, if you're going in some other capacity, that's different. But we would really say that if you're going to your school and you're saying, I'm a member of St. Somewhere, it is really important that your vicar has said, great job. Yeah, that's okay. The second thing we would say is, have you got a partner? Good practice is always to have more than one adult in the room with children. And actually, if you don't have a partner, the school might insist on having a TA or a teacher in there if they're available. Some schools will have that as a general practice anyway. But it might be that, like Claire, you invite 7 people from your church to join you. And if you have really good relationship with your school and then they know that you're fairly able, they would probably be quite happy for you to get on with that. But some schools, come what may, they will always need a member of staff in there. One thing I would say is when you go to your school, what that club looks like really needs to be worked out with the school. Don't go in with a feeling of, I'm going to be seeing 30 children or I'm going to be seeing 3 children. It's really important that we talk about these things with the school. So it's very important that we organise an agreement with the school. We ask the school, who are the children who you would like us to work with? Now, if you've never done this before, you can say to them, it's a pilot. But do think about what your capacity is before you go in. So if it's going to be, for instance, at a lunchtime, but you work, you can't offer that. Do think, actually, I could do a Thursday after school, or I could do a Tuesday lunchtime. Work out what you can offer and for how long. It's only for a short period. And I would also think about your experience. So if you're someone who's very new into the school, it might be that you think, actually, the best thing for me would be to have a smaller group of children. So you could say to the school, I think maybe 8 children would be great. Or you might be really confident, you know all the year 6s, and you could say, I could take on all 30. But it's absolutely about the agreement of the school. Having agreed the days of the week and the duration and which year group you're going to go with, you also need to do that thing that we talked about before. Establish what good safe practice is. Do they need you to get a DBS? And what's their expectation around risk assessments and safeguarding? It might well that they already have all that covered, but just ask them. Again, on our Padlet board, we have examples of risk assessments. So if you're starting out anew, and it's always worth thinking about what risks might be there anyway. So I, in some ways, would always say it's worth you thinking about just doing one and just checking in with whoever's the safeguarding lead at school and just saying, is this okay? Is there anything else I need to be thinking about? Again, Sammy and I can help you with that if you get stuck. There are also some leaflets that you will find on the website. Now, the leaflets are explanations for the children about what the Happiness Club is. There are also leaflets for families, so they have an explanation, and there are also leaflets for staff. Now, you can edit those, you can make them how you want them, but they're colourful, they're beautiful, they tell you what's there. There's also a template. I would say it's probably a bit long, to be honest, on reflection, but there's a template of a letter you could send to school that would explain what happiness clubs are. We are not precious about these resources. So if you need to edit them or just make them right for you, that's absolutely fine. The other thing I guess that's important to say about this document is I think when you read it and you go through the checklist, the most important thing is the school going to trust you? So how you are on the phone when you first ring them, how you are when you speak to administrative staff, how you speak to the children goes a long, long way. If you send an email in and you get no reply, please do not be surprised or be offended. Schools are not thinking our most important priority is happiness clubs. They will be dealing with so many complex issues around their pupils, around education. We need to be very, very sensitive. So there's a little bit of a steer on what you do if you don't hear anything back. I think that's just about everything that's in there that you need to know. So I'm just going to run through at the end of the document. It just has a quick tick list again. It says, have you bought the book? Have you browsed through 50 Ways to Be Happy? Have you watched the films? Have you started to pray for the school and pray that God will help you with this? If you want any support at the end of all that you've looked through, when you've looked through the website, when you've looked through our action plan and you're still thinking, oh my goodness, all is not lost, because both Sammy and I are available for you to speak to, and our emails are all over everywhere. So either ring us or email us, and we would love to be in contact with you. Sammy, is there anything else that I've missed out that we need to add in there?
The first place you probably want to start is by checking out one of our websites and working step by step through how to set up and run a happiness club, and then having the necessary conversations. But for Charlotte and I, this is just the start. So the rhythm that we're going to be adopting is to every term run something like this to introduce happiness clubs to people for the first time, but also to follow it up with a drop-in session. So when we email you with the recording link and all those other resources, we're also going to invite you to join us on the 19th of March from 1 to 2 o'clock. And that's your session. We're not going to introduce anything new, but that's processing time. It's time for you to come and say, I've had a think about this. Can you answer this question? Or I've talked to this person, they've got this concern. What would you advise I say to them? So it gives you a little bit of time after today to go away, have a think. Okay, what might work for you in your context? What's the right approach? What's the right time scale? And then to come back with any questions that you have. Now, beyond that, okay, if you want to be part of the community that we're hoping to grow to resource and support and encourage each other, then you'll need to sign up on our GDPR form. So the form that you signed up for tonight gives us permission to email you once more with the recording, with the resources, and with the invitation to March. But if you would like to us to keep you informed about other opportunities as they come about, then we need you to fill in the GDPR form. Anna's put it in the chat, and it'll also be in the email that we send out to you. We don't ask for lots of information. Again, it's your name, it's your email, where you are. The only people that have access to that information are the Diocese of Peterborough and Hope, and we will only email you about happiness clubs. We're not going to contact you about anything else. So all of that information, we'll say again before the end, it's in the chat and it'll be in the email that we send you as well. But I think, Charlotte, we've probably talked for quite enough, and it might be really good to hand over to these lovely people and see what questions they've got just as a start. Okay, so Sarah from Peterborough is asking Charlotte, is there a consent form for parents for happiness clubs?
That's a really good question, Sarah. Can I just say, Sarah is my neighbour 3 doors up. I am trying to remember if we have got a consent form. I would suggest that probably the best way forward with this is to ask the school about the consent forms that they have. I think for us to use our own consent forms wouldn't work. I think that's one of those things that actually the school needs to organise. So when the leaflets go out, I think you follow the protocols of the school on that, and they hold the responsibility for that, because all their insurance, all their safeguarding, everything is covered by them in this session. So I don't think we did put consent forms in because we thought that the school would provide them. Really good question.
Yeah. And it comes back to, we are not managing happiness clubs. Okay, a happiness club is a happiness club is a happiness club. It's not a Bible club. It's not Messy Church. It is based on the 10 keys, but we're not managing it. They're not our happiness clubs. Okay, we are supporting and resourcing you. Okay, because it's your happiness club, and details like that are for you to work out between church and school or the other agencies involved. Okay. So Hannah is asking, do you have to have the older members of the church, or can it be just a group of children from the school? Just thinking, we have a tiny congregation and don't have 8+ people to volunteer. So again, this goes back to Claire's scenario where she was intentional about getting older people involved, but you don't have to, do you, Charlotte?
No, and I think what's really key in this is thinking about your capacity and what you can do. And what we want the children, I think, first and foremost, to feel and sense in this group is that it's really good fun. So if you only have capacity to have you plus one other and run it for 4 weeks and just cover 2 keys, but the kids come out of that saying, that was absolutely brilliant, job done. We would prefer that than you ran for 10 weeks, which is a really unlikely thing for a school to be able to actually timetable for you. So many things happen during the school calendar. So a calendar is set up, but then suddenly there's I don't know, a sports day that had to be moved because it rained on the day that it was meant to be, and it happens to fall on your happiness club day. You have to be so flexible about this. So in some ways, I would say, Hannah, it's really up to you to think about what's the best way that you could deliver this within the constraints and the energy that you have and the people on board. But I would say that if you're partnering with your church, even if people can't be there, make sure that you're regularly talking about it in church and sharing the stories so that it's generating an interest. It was really interesting. In one of the clubs that we ran, I heard a vicar say, no one is going to want to come and do this, that there won't be any volunteers. We have an aged congregation. Very few people will want to do this. Anyway, the person who was running the club thought, well, I know so and so and so and so and so. So she just went and asked them. And they all said, oh, yeah, I'd love to. And it was absolutely to the surprise of what the vicar had predicted, because I think she was very aware of everything that those people were already doing. But there was something really exciting about just going to school and chatting with children and then making a mindfulness jar or an origami dog. And all they were being asked to do was just chat and get to know kids. So one of my roles is to help churches connect with schools. And you would have thought that what schools would say is, oh, could you help us with our RE provision, or could you help us with assemblies or whatever? But actually, one of the things that they really want us to do is to bless their staff. And so we work quite hard at that. And I often think it's interesting that they don't say assemblies often. They are looking for that relational connection. And if you do something like an all singing assembly, which is wonderful, at the end of it, you don't know the children any better. You might have delivered the most wonderful interactive assembly, but you don't really know lots more about the children. The wonderful thing about happiness clubs is you get to know 6 or 7 or 15 children really quite well, and they get to know you really quite well. And then you walk about your village or your town and you bump into them. And at last you have this connection where you know something about them and you start building upon that.
Oh, so another question from Sarah. Do I need to register my happiness club on the website? That's a really good question, isn't it?
So on the Action for Happiness Club Action for Happiness page, they will ask for your details. I don't think it's asking you to register where you do your club, but if you are doing your club, Sarah, we would love to know where you're doing it and which school you're working with, because it just gives us a feel of whether it's working. We're not going to check up on you. We're not going to go, oh my word, she's missed out key 7. We're not going to do that, but it's really encouraging to us to know, and we get to hear more stories and how people are shaping it.
So I'm aware, Charlotte, one of the things we haven't said, but it was raised at lunchtime. So you might like to know that happiness clubs are not explicitly Christian in their content. They are about well-being, and in a way they tap into the kind of values education that is increasingly important in our school. And the 10 keys actually touch on many Christian values. So there's a lot of shared values there, but they're not explicitly Christian. So that might inform the conversations that you have with your church, but also with the school. This is about nurturing and supporting children's well-being. It's about being Jesus. It's about the action speaking louder than words. We do have other things in the pipeline, okay, that might be a little bit more explicit, but they will only work when you've done happiness clubs and looked at the 10 keys as they are. For example, if we look at a Bible character who was really good at giving or making friends, okay, it will make more sense to children if they've already explored those keys in the context of happiness clubs, okay, and just applied them to their own lives. So more is coming. We're going downstream a bit further, okay, more is coming downstream rather, okay, but happiness clubs are not explicitly Christian. It's not a Bible club, but they are based on values. And we know values education is increasingly important in our schools. And quite often Charlotte's found that schools pick up on happiness clubs and it informs some of their school values. And you'll then see the signs and the keys around the school. Okay, so we have another question. What might be a good number of children to be in the club, and how long roughly is each session? Charlotte, do you want to go again, or do you want me to speak to that one?
I can go on this one.
Go on then.
I would say it really depends on your context and depends on your capacity and depends on what you agree with the school. So if it terrifies you to have 20 children, please don't have 20 children. Don't go in saying 20 children. Just say, are there maybe 6 children? Sounds better. Say, are there about 6 children that I could pilot this with? I've not done it before, so I'd rather have a smaller group. I would say you need to have a few in there. I'd say less than 6 probably would be too small. So I think you're talking probably between 6 and anything up. If it's too big, you lose the relational quality of this. One of the things that Claire did as a result of her happiness clubs is that she had a graduation ceremony at the end of doing all the 10 keys. And both the older people and the children got these graduation certificates. And then they became an ambassador for happiness and promote the keys for happiness around their settings. So the older people could be promoting happiness keys in church. The children could be promoting happiness keys in school. Some of those children would do maybe an assembly about the 10 keys for being happy and which are the ones that they carry. So the idea is that there's some longevity in this. We have some schools where a pilot was done with just a few children, and the school loved it so much they then said, can you roll this out with every single year group? And so in that school, sometimes children only got 3 sessions because actually you couldn't do more than that. So they would just get a taste of it. So there are many ways in which you can do this. And I think about your capacity, think about what the school is asking. A really good way of talking to school about this is to say, are there some children that could be really supported in their well-being? Not ones in crisis, we don't think we could do that, but ones who maybe just slip through the loopholes, who you think would really benefit by having conversations about, for instance, sleep and exercise. You know, maybe their homes are ones where those things aren't spoken about. Maybe there's something about those children who are a little bit quiet and find it really difficult to make friends. And they just haven't got those structures around them to know how to do those things. So I think it's really a conversation that you've got to have with the school to know. If I was going to do this the first time and I was a teacher, I would not want to do this with 30 children. I don't think I would want more than 15. In fact, I think I'd probably want about at tops 12. It's funny, that number 12. And if there were 12, I would want some help from church to come along as well. Because you just want that relational thing where you're talking to the children and you're sharing together, and that it's a kind of non-anxious environment.
You've probably already said this, Charlotte, but the reason I wouldn't want to go too low either is you've always got that child that maybe it's a lunchtime and it's a sunny day and they just want to run around with their friends instead, or they've got the music lesson, or they've got to finish their writing task, okay, or they're off sick. So if you go too small and you've got a couple of children that just can't be there, then actually it's quite difficult to get a conversation going as well. So 6 to 12 is a really good number. We're coming in to land now. We don't want to go over time. So Anna, you might want to put the slide on the screen with Charlotte and my emails on it. And we'll also remind you of that GDPR link. So if when you go away this evening, when you wake up tomorrow morning, okay, the next day or next week, something comes to mind, don't stew on it. Okay, happiness clubs are about flourishing, and we want you to flourish as you consider and maybe deliver happiness clubs in your context. So we are here to resource and support you. Do drop us a line, do get in touch. Okay, no question is a silly question. Okay, I just want to apologise for my internet this evening. Yeah, it's been really ropey all evening, and that's why I keep dropping out. So just in case I drop out again, I'm going to hand over again to Charlotte and say, Charlotte, could you help us end this session with a moment of reflection and a little bit of pause for processing to help us transition between this webinar and whatever the rest of our evening holds in store?
So if you are someone who prays, please join me in praying by the Amen at the end, which means yes, I agree. If you're not the praying type, that's absolutely fine. Maybe just use this time to listen to the words and to ruminate upon how you might get involved with bringing happiness to children. So let's pray. Father God, thank you for everyone who has come onto this webinar tonight to consider the well-being of children. Lord, your gospel, your good news was all about providing food for those who didn't have it, those who were the least, the lost, and the last. And we really want happiness to be a staple diet in our children in our schools, especially amongst those who are sad, who are hungry for something else. So would you use our thinking from tonight and the resources that are on display to consider how we might join in with your desire for happiness to be something that is available for children? Bless everybody as they go back into their homes, maybe tucked down for the evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Charlotte. So just to say, we will be in touch. You'll receive an email from us with a link to this recording, with the PowerPoint slides, with that GDPR form link and an invitation to the 19th of March. But there's no time pressure on this. Some of you might be ready now to start. For some of you, it might not be the right season for you, for your context, for the school. So when you come in March, we haven't got any expectations. Okay, we are here to accompany you whenever it's right for you in your context to do this. We'll be running a session like this every term, as well as a follow-up session. So please don't feel under any pressure. But what we would love to do is accompany you, because we'd love to hear those stories. And as we take this national, those stories and that feedback will really help us to continue to develop this, to resource and support more people to deliver it, and hopefully help more children to flourish. So thank you for coming. We'll be in touch. Take care. Good night and God bless.